Okay, class. So I wanted to do a quick run through of the blueprint for the narrative essay and what are conventions of the narrative essay or expectations of the narrative genre. So we are familiar with the three parts of an essay, essentially the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Um, that is very typical of all of our essays that we do and all the essays you'll be asked to do. In each different kind of an assignment, though, you will be doing different things in the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. In other words, there are different expectations depending on what type of assignment you're being asked to do of what the introduction, for example, would look like, and so on and so on. Excuse me. So, for example, you may have heard of the thesis statement and using a hook or something like that. Those are typical of an argumentative paper, which is what we're going to get to later on in the semester. But in a narrative, you actually want to do something that's quite the opposite, and this is called a teaser. So, what is a teaser? It is exactly what it sounds like. It is, think of it as like a movie preview. A preview gives you just enough information about the movie to try to coax audiences into watching it, right? It's a selling point for the movie, but it doesn't give away the farm. It doesn't, give away if it's a mystery movie, it doesn't give away the twist ending, for example. That would be like a thesis statement. A thesis statement, which we'll get to much later, um, well, not much later, it's coming up in Unit 2, but the thesis statement is telling you exactly what you're going to do or what you're going to reveal, if you will, in the essay, right? Well, a teaser is not giving away exactly what's going to happen in this. It's actually meant to be sort of playfully um, teasing the audience into, hinting at what's to come, so the audience can get a sense of, is this going to be a sad story, a funny story, a scary story, whatever it might be. But you haven't given away the punchline, for example. Um, so think of it like that, like what kinds of information do we get in a good preview, for example? And so here's a video clip of a preview for the famous film The Sixth Sense. Many of you have probably seen that film before, and so I just want you to watch it and ask yourself, what is this preview telling us about the film? Okay, so take a moment, if you will, even to pause this video and watch the clip below by watching this video. I'll give you a second to pause and then I'll continue. Okay, so assuming you've watched the clip, what are some things that you can see very plainly from this preview? Let's pretend you haven't seen the film. For those of you who have seen The Sixth Sense, let's say that you have not seen this film before. So, what's information that we get from the clip? We can see that it's a horror movie, right? We can see probably who our main character or main characters are, and we can see that it's about a little kid who sees dead people or ghosts, right? But especially for those of you who've seen the film, you know that there's a famous twist ending in The Sixth Sense. I won't give it away for those of you who haven't seen it. You need to see it. Okay, but it's kind of the big deal that is The Sixth Sense. It's what made it so popular back in 1999. Um, it's tempting, in a preview, for example, to try to get audiences out there to say this movie has got such a surprise, it'll knock your socks off. Or, in this film, here's what's going to happen. Can you believe that? Come see it. To try to, and I'm purposely not giving away the ending, but let's say that the preview gave the ending away. Well, that would be a bad preview because you're getting all the information. There's no surprise. There's no element of surprise when you actually see the story or the film. And so it's tempting for us, in other words, like for let's say, for example, you're telling a joke to someone, it's tempting to rush to the punchline. After you've told a joke, maybe the fifth time in a day, it gets shorter and shorter, right? And you're rushing the punchline. But you might notice too that the effect at the fifth time is not as good as the first time you told a joke. That's because the first time you took your time and you did not give away the punchline too early. And so just think of your teaser or the introduction for a narrative. That's the function that it has. Is it's not meant to give away the ending. It's not meant to give away the big surprise. It's meant to just playfully hint at what's to come, just enough to interest certain readers. And that sort of preps us for what comes next, which is called the scene. Now, this is equivalent to the body of your essay. And so in a narrative, we set up what's called the scene. You'll notice that these have filmic, they're like, I'm using film examples for what we know. Excuse me. And so the scene section is the meat and bulk of your essay. This is where you actually take the time to flesh out your story. And think of it, if you will, kind of like a flashback. Okay, you start at the beginning. If you're telling a story about a journey or adventure you went on with friends, childhood friends, start at the very, very beginning. Don't start right at the moment the adventure began. Start at the beginning of the day and take your time. Okay, and one way that we do this is through something called the establishing shot. This is a film term, again, and this is like something that it's the first shot that you see at the beginning of every scene. Before a scene unfolds, you get what's called an establishing shot. So, take for example this image that's from the TV show Friends. So, this is an image that would typically be given to us before a scene is unfolding. And what does it do? Well, it establishes where we're at. Okay, Central Perk, which is for any Friends fans listening, is the coffee shop that the characters hung out in. So it's establishing where we're at. We're not at a house, we're not at a movie theater, we're not at a restaurant, we're at a coffee shop. It also, if you look closely, you can sense what time of day it is. Okay, it appears to be light outside, so you can guess reasonably fairly that it's daytime. Okay, um, we can sense the kind of people that hang out at this place. Okay, the kinds of characters that we might encounter. Okay, we see youngish white people who look to be middle class. Okay, um, so we get a sense of the demographic of the people. It's just establishing where we're at and where we might be going, so you get a sense of uh, you're oriented in time and space of where we're at. Okay. Now that's kind of difficult to explain. The best way to see this is in an actual example. Okay, so for example, I give this right here is from an actual story, an actual narrative. Um, and before we even get into the story, here is how it begins. The signs on the windows lured me inside. For $1 I could get 2 eggs, toast, and potatoes. The place looked better than most. Family fun and clean. The signs were hand-lettered and neat. The paper had yellowed some, but the black letters remained bold. A green and white awning was perched over the door where the name Clara's was stenciled. Now, if you had to guess, where are we? Okay, if you guessed that we were at a restaurant, right? That's obvious, okay, but look at how much better that is than saying, I walked into the restaurant. You see, you have established and really painted a picture of where we're at before your actual scene unfolds or your story unfolds. Let's say the rest of this story was about a first date that went terribly badly, okay, an awkward or embarrassing moment, for example. Okay, this is a way to take your time and really set up your scene so that we really get an understanding of where we're at and we experience this story the way you did, right? Okay, you know that when you're, for example, if you were writing about a first date, you know that in those moments you pay attention to everything around you. Your senses are heightened, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Um, the exercise that we did where you watched the North by Northwest clip, okay? The reason why I had you all do that is this is exactly how you would basically go about doing an establishing shot and taking your time and letting the climax or the main punchline of your story unfold naturally and with really taking your time to set up suspense. Okay. So that scene from North by Northwest was about a 10-minute clip, and most of you probably did an awful lot of writing. And you'll notice if you read it from start to finish, it works just like this. Okay, we start, at the beginning. Bus comes down the road. We are in a country setting, middle of nowhere. A man, gray suit, gets dust flown all about him as the bus passes by, and he gets off the bus and stares at the empty road. That's sort of the establishing shot, right? And then as you were watching that clip, you probably got a little bit bored and thought, okay, what's going on? What's going to happen? But it also might have built a sense of anticipation, right? You're waiting for this big moment. And of course, in your narrative, you've given us a teaser, so we know that probably something exciting is going to happen. And so it really works to let your audience or your reader get right there with you and just feel that anxiety, that natural anxiety that's good, that makes them want to read more. Okay. So then by the time we get to the punchline, which in this case for the North by Northwest clip, movie clip, it's an old movie clip, he almost gets run over by a bus and a plane crashes into it and it blows up. Right. So if that really happened to you and you were retelling your story to like your grandkids, for example, that would be the moment that you were trying to rush to and tell. Okay. You might when you're retelling this at family reunions, you might just skip all of that build up and that suspense and just say, yeah, there was this one time I almost got hit by a bus and a plane flew into it and it blew up, right? That might be kind of the short version, but notice that it doesn't have the same effect, right? So I had y'all do that to get y'all sort of used to what it means to take your time and build in your narrative, okay? And then finally, we have what's called musings. Now, this is equivalent to the conclusion. And all this really is you're reflecting on the event. How did this change you? What did you learn from it? What did you gain from this experience? What did you lose, et cetera, et cetera? And as I say here, it doesn't have to be really deep or profound. It can be very simple, but you just it's that way of tying up the loose ends for your reader. What was the sort of result of this event and where are you at now? It leaves the reader with a sense of closure. It's very important, um, but it's also very simple to write. And that is our narrative blueprint in a nutshell, and what a narrative is supposed to look like. Um, when you leave this folder of material, if you go into part 3 of this module, module 3, you will notice that there is a student sample that has fleshed out a teaser, a scene, and musings or intro, body, conclusion for us. And I would highly suggest that you read it, go over it, and model your own essay after it.